Depending on where you live, there's a pretty good chance you woke up to the news that Paul George has officially signed with the 76ers. Well, certainly for anyone living in Philadelphia, as the agreement was reported at 3:42 a.m. Eastern Time. But what exactly does this mean for the Eastern Conference? How does the dynamic work between PG, Maxey, and Joel? And just how good can we expect the 76ers to be next season? At 34 years old with a long history of leg injuries, it's only standard that at this point Paul George has lost a decent bit of athleticism, and that's affected various areas of his game, none more than his slashing. I'd say his biggest flaw as a player at this point is his inability to beat athletic defenders off the dribble. We saw that in the Dallas series, attacking and struggling time and time again to create an advantage, which forced him into relying on an incredibly tough diet of pull-up jumpers. Here's the thing, he's never been all that great of a pull-up shooter inside the arc. If we take a look at his 2-point percentage on these attempts since joining the Thunder 7 years ago, he's only been over 40% 3 times, consistently hovering around that 38 to 39 range, although it has looked at its best in these 2 most recent seasons. So with a lack of offense coming at the rim, very limited efficiency in the mid-range, he's heavily reliant on the 3 ball to carry most of his scoring, and that's what leads to the inconsistency. When he's feeling it, he looks unguardable, a 6'8 forward with great ball handling, a quick motion off the dribble, who's just drilling long-range jumpers over any and every defender. But when he's cold, he's really cold, and that's when you start to get tour date PG like we saw in 4 of the 6 games in last year's playoffs. He's made 35% of his pull-up threes over the last 3 seasons, which is a pretty decent mark, but when that's your best source of offense and you aren't an elite passer, that just puts a hard cap on how much you can produce as a number 1 or number 2 creator. However, it's a very different story when you look at his off-the-catch numbers. He's been over 40% in 6 of the last 7 seasons, peaking last year at over 45%, and truly, you'd be hard-pressed to find even 4 or 5 guys who can match this level of catch-and-shoot production. This is where I think he makes the biggest difference in Philly because of who they already have on the roster. Joel Embiid is one of, if not the best middle of the floor scorer we've ever seen. The pull-ups, the explosive driving, the foul drawing, when he catches the ball inside the arc, he's basically unstoppable. As a result, he demands a boatload of attention in these spots, often from 1 pass away, and that creates a ton of space on the perimeter for the guys around him. This is where George comes in, because not only is he one of the best catch-and-shoot weapons in the league, this puts him in advantageous situations to attack closeouts or a rotating defense. I know I said he struggles beating defenders off the dribble from a standstill, but when playing off of an advantage, he's a really crafty slasher, using his size and length to put pressure on the paint, where he's not just a threat to finish, but will move the ball and create openings for his teammates. In this sense, I expect the dynamic of Joel and PG to work extremely well. It's difficult to bring help off of George, which creates more space for the MVP, but you also can't leave that guy one-on-one, and help has to come from somewhere, which then creates an advantage for a wing like George to attack. With that said, I also think Joel can help elevate George's on-ball game, particularly in the pick and roll. Because Joel's such a massive threat in the middle, that means when he's screening and rolling towards the free throw line, that is priority number 1 for every single defense. You'll have a lot of plays like this where his defender chooses to not even play the ball at all, which essentially leaves the handler with a free lane to the basket. And if that defender does step towards the ball, there's likely a third defender coming over early from the weak side to take away the roll, and it creates this easy read and react style of playmaking where the passes aren't very difficult to make. Think about who PG has had as a pick and roll partner in the past. Steven Adams, Ivica Zubac, Mason Plumlee. The biggest threat he's ever had is probably Montrezl Harrell, who isn't in the same stratosphere as Joel. So when it comes to this duo, I'm expecting George to be elevated both on and off the ball, while giving Joel yet another shooting option who can also handle in the 2-man game. because last year that was pretty exclusively a Tyrese Maxey action who fits right into this new scenario like a glove. I mentioned that George's biggest flaw at this point is rim pressure. Maxey has a unique combination of explosive burst and tight ball handling that has turned him into one of the most difficult players in the league to keep out of the paint. He's not a super advanced passer, but is someone who will hit Joel in the middle, make kickouts, and once again, PG as an off wing is being maximized. As a result, I think Maxey will still be their lead ball handler by a considerable margin. His ability to get into the defense and create advantages is just on a different level at this point, and he pairs that with some great off the dribble 3-point shooting, so you're getting a multifaceted approach. But keep in mind, he too is an elite off the catch weapon. Remember when I said you'd be hard pressed to find 4 or 5 guys who can match PG's catch and shoot numbers? Well, Maxey is one of those guys, hitting 45% of his threes off the catch over the last 3 seasons. He's an even more explosive slasher in these spots as well, so you've got 2 of the best spot ups in the league playing off of the most devastating middle of the floor scorer who can both handle the ball when needed, and that level of flexibility can't possibly be overstated. Maybe the most important part of this signing is how many possible lineups you can run. Last year, they only had 2 creators, meaning that Joel and Maxey had to stagger as much as possible so that one was always on the floor. Now that there's a third, it changes everything. You'll see more of those 2 with PG running the bench unit. Maybe Maxey and PG pair up while Joel runs the bench unit. And in addition to having a third creator, another reason there's more lineup flexibility now is because of everything George brings on the other side of the ball. He's not anywhere near the defender he was in OKC, and certainly not Indiana, but I think there's been an overcorrection, meaning that a lot of people think he's just an average or slightly above average defender at this point. He's still a very good and versatile defensive forward. As he's lost some of his agility, his role has changed from that of a menace at the point of attack to more of a helper, and he more than does his job. It starts with the size and length. You can never have too many big wings on the court, but also the IQ and awareness it takes to always be in the right spot at the right time. Joel is one of the best paint protectors on the planet, and something they've always lacked behind him is a forward who can make the right rotations and help the helper. This is where George excels, as he not only will consistently get into a good position, he offers legitimate resistance at the rim. He's also got really quick hands, constantly deflecting or outright stealing passes in the lanes, so you're adding an awesome defensive playmaker to your already elite interior defense. And he also brings switchability, which is where that lineup versatility comes into play. Not that I'd ever expect it, but he can play the 2, and I do expect him to play a lot of time at the 4, which creates an opening on the wing for another offensive threat, or maybe a better point of attack guy, which is actually a pretty perfect segue into some of my concerns with the roster. They have a serious lack of point of attack defense. They just lost DeAnthony Melton to the Warriors, and he was by far their best option. Outside of that, they're forced to rely on Kelly Oubre or 38-year-old Kyle Lowry. On offense, I worry a bit about the fact that they don't have the best passing across the board. Without a superstar playmaker, you want the rest of the cast to be filled with great connectors, and I feel like the Sixers are missing this a bit. Lowry's amazing, but like I said, he's 38 and that age has really been showing. It's been reported that Nick Batum will not return, and he was their second best guy in this regard. With Maxey, George, and Embiid, the ideal 4th guy would be a high-level point-of-attack defender who can make difficult passes. On the high end, that's a Drew Holiday or Marcus Smart type of player. And because they don't have that, at the time being, I still don't know if they have enough juice to really make me confident in a series against the Celtics. In my last video, I mentioned that I think the Knicks are number 2 in the East. Since then, they've lost Hartenstein, and to me, that takes them down a decent amount. While I absolutely love the Paul George move for Philly, so to me, that elevates them to the number 2 spot. I hope they find a way to negate those 2 major concerns of mine, because if so, we're looking at a tier 1 NBA championship contender. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of the Sixers. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.